The old car has a certain smell to it. It's not a bad smell. Not really, it's a mix of old leather, the faintest hint of gasoline, and that warm dusty scent that settles into something that's been around you. No, the one the dashboard is cracked in a few places, a fine web of lines spreading out from the corners of the windshield. The seats are worn smooth, in just the right spots. It starts every single morning a little grumble, then a steady reliable purr. It's never let me down, not once. To you though, it was always something else. I'd see you getting ready for school, and you'd peek out the front window. If you saw me already in the driver's seat waiting, your shoulders would just slump just a little. You'd walk out, your backpack slung over one shoulder, and you'd take this deep breath before opening the door. Like you were stepping into something unpleasant, you'd slide into the passenger seat, and the first thing you'd do is connect your phone to the stereo, blasting your music, building a wall of sound between us. You expression the moment your bravado flickered, you quickly turned away, and you all walked off toward the bleachers, your laughter fading into the general noise of the crowd. I was standing in the kitchen, and I felt the tears start to well up. I tried to stop them, to be strong, but I couldn't. My shoulders started to shake. You turned around and saw me, and your face changed from anger to confusion. "Mom, what's wrong?" And it all just came pouring out. The words tumbled out between sobs. I couldn't control. "You think this is clutter," I said, my voice trembling. "You think my car is pathetic. That car, this house, it's all I have. Do you have any idea what I gave up for you, for that car? You're so embarrassed of me driving." I saw the shock on your face. You took a step back. "What are you talking about?" "The down payment for your car," I cried. "Where did you think that money came from? Did you think it grew on trees?" "I took it from my retirement fund, the money I was supposed to live on when I am too old to work. I gave you a piece of my future, because I was so afraid that my old car wouldn't be safe enough for you. I gave up any chance of a vacation, of new clothes, of any kind of life for myself, just so you could have something nice, something safe, and you have the nerve to call the car that provided for you pathetic." I listed it all off: the second job, I almost took the dental work, I postponed the tiny invisible sacrifices that filled every single day. I did all of that for you, I said, my voice cracking, and you mocked me for it. The silence in the kitchen was heavier than any sound. You just stood there staring at me. I saw the realization dawn on your face. It wasn't just hearing the words, it was understanding the weight behind them. The years of struggle I'd kept hidden from you, all to give you a normal, happy childhood. The color drained from your face, your eyes filled with tears. "Mom," you whispered, I didn't know. I am so sorry. I am such an idiot." You came over and hugged me. It wasn't like the hug when you got the car. That was a hug of excitement. This was different. This was a hug of understanding, of remorse. You were crying too. "I didn't know," you kept saying. "I would never have said those things if I knew. I am so sorry. I don't deserve any of this." I went to the game. I sat by myself high up in the stands. I watched the players run back and forth, but I didn't really see any of it. All I could see was your face from the parking lot. The look of contempt. You had so carefully crafted the game, ended our team lost. I waited for you by the gate we agreed on. You walked up, your spirit dampened by the loss. But when you saw me, that defensive mask slid back into place. You didn't speak, neither did I. We stood there in the kitchen for a long time, just holding each other. It was like the air had been cleared of some terrible poison. The anger and the resentment just melted away, replaced by this raw, painful, but honest connection. Things changed after that. You started to see the old blue sedan differently. You'd offer to wash it for me on the weekends. You'd check its oil without me asking. You never complained about its rattles again. In fact, one time you said, "You know, this car is actually really comfortable. It's like a tank. Nothing can hurt it." And you started to appreciate your own car in a new way. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol, a testament. You'd look at it, and you'd see the sacrifice it represented. You became more protective of it, but not in a prideful way, in a grateful way. The bond between us deepened in a way I never thought possible. It was like we had finally leveled with each other. You saw me not just as your parent, but as a person who gets tired, who makes sacrifices, who has fears, and who can be hurt. And I saw you mature before my eyes, developing an empathy that can only come from truly understanding another person's struggle. Now when we're both in the driveway, you in your car, and me in mine, y'all give me a little wave before we both head off for the day. It's a small gesture, but it says everything. It says, "I see you, I appreciate you," and that is worth more than any car, any house, any amount of money in the world. The sacrifice was never about getting a thank you, but the understanding that was the gift I never knew I needed. You know, I never really cared much for cars. To me, a car is a tool. It gets you from point A to point B. My old sedan, a 10-year-old model with a few dents and a lot of miles, it did the job just fine. It was reliable, it was paid for, that was enough for me. My son Leo, he saw things differently. He's 17, caught up in that world, where your image is everything. He'd get in the passenger seat, and I could feel the embarrassment radiating off him. He'd slumped down, hoping his friends wouldn't see him. Dad, when are you finally going to get a real car? He'd ask, not even trying to hide the frustration. Jason's dad just got a new Tesla. Mr. Henderson drives an Audi. This thing it's an embarrassment. I'd just smile and keep driving. It has 4 wheels and an engine. Leo, it works. But inside it stung a little, not for me, but for him. He'd started to measure a person's worth by the logo on their grill. He couldn't see that Jason's dad was up to his eyeballs in debt, or that Mr. Henderson leased his car and had nothing saved for retirement. He just saw the shiny surface. What he didn't see was the work happening behind the scenes. My business, the one I built from a single van and a lot of sweat equity, was doing better than ever. We'd been chasing this one client, a massive corporation, for years, and we finally landed them. It wasn't just a contract, it was a partnership that would secure our future for a decade. The profit from that single deal was more than I'd made in the previous 5 years combined. When the money hit the account, my first thought wasn't about a new car for myself. It wasn't about a fancy watch or a vacation. My first thought was about security. I sat down at the kitchen table that night with the bank statement in front of me, and I made a plan. The very first thing I did was transfer a huge sum to the mortgage company. A few clicks, and our house was ours, truly ours. No more payments, ever. The weight that lifted off my shoulders, you can't put a price on that. The ride home was utterly silent. The only sound was the turn signal clicking rhythmically at the empty intersections. The air in the car was thick and heavy. You stared straight ahead, your jaw set. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind was racing, sifting through years of memories, of sacrifices, of quiet choices made for your benefit. Then I set up a trust fund for Leo, a substantial amount, enough to give him a real head start in life, for a down payment on a home, to start a business, something meaningful. I wanted his future to be secure regardless of what path he chose. And then, because I am his dad, and I wanted to give him something he could enjoy now, I did something a little flashy. I bought him the car he'd been dreaming of, a top-off-the-line model, the one he was always pointing out in magazines. I had it delivered on a Saturday morning. The look on his face was pure shock, then disbelief. Then this incredible joy. He kept saying, "This is for me." Seriously, he was hugging me. He was so happy in that moment. It felt like the right thing to do. Months went by. Leo loved that car. He washed it every weekend. He was so proud of it. And I was happy for him. I kept driving my old sedan. It never bothered me, not until that dinner. It was a Sunday. The whole family was over. My wife, Leo, his sister, my brother. We were all around the table laughing, passing around plates of food. The conversation turned to Leo's upcoming graduation party. He was talking about where everyone would park, and he made a joke, a casual offhand comment. He nodded toward the window, toward my car in the driveway, and said with a smirk, "Yeah, we'll have to make sure nobody parks next to Dad's beater. Wouldn't want it to fall apart and scratch up their paint jobs." The table got quiet for a second. A few people chuckled awkwardly. My brother looked down at his plate. I saw my wife's face just fall, and I looked at my son. I saw the arrogance in his smile. He genuinely thought it was a funny, harmless dig. He had no idea. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I just finished chewing my bite of food, set my fork down, and wiped my mouth with my napkin. "Leo," I said, my voice perfectly calm, "can you come with me for a moment? I want to show you something." He looked confused, a little annoyed at the interruption, but he pushed his chair back and followed me into my home office. I sat down at the desk and motioned for him to stand behind me. I woke up the computer, opened a browser, and logged into my business accounting software. The dashboard loaded up, showing all the accounts, the profit and loss statements. "What is this?" he asked, his tone impatient. "This is where the money goes, Leo," I said. I navigated to the transaction history for the main business account. I scrolled back to the date, the one right after the big deal closed. I pointed to the screen. "See that withdrawal there?" He leaned in. It was a large number, a very large number. His eyes widened just a fraction. "Yeah." I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. The sudden quiet was deafening. You moved to open your door to escape into the house. That's the exact amount to the dollar, for the car sitting in the garage your car. He was silent. I could feel the shift in the room. I scrolled down a little further. And see this one right after it. I pointed to another transaction, even larger. That's what paid off this house, the entire mortgage. I clicked again. And this one here, that's your trust fund. It's invested, it's for your future. I turned the chair around slowly to face him. His face was pale, all the smugness was gone, replaced by a dawning, horrifying understanding. He was just staring at the screen, at the strings of numbers that represented a reality he never knew existed. Wealth isn't for showing off, Leo. I said, my voice still quiet, but every word had weight now. Anyone can look rich for a month by taking on a pile of debt. That's not success, that's a performance. Real wealth is quiet, it's security. It's knowing that your family has a roof over their head that can't be taken away. It's knowing that your son has a foundation to build his life on no matter what happens. I gestured back toward the kitchen. That beater out there, it's a reminder. It reminds me to stay grounded. It reminds me that what matters isn't the car I drive, but the fact that I never have to worry about losing the house it's parked in front of. It represents a choice, the choice between looking successful and actually building something that lasts. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there looking from the computer screen to me, and then back again. The scale of it was sinking in. The money was one thing, but the philosophy behind it was something else entirely. He had mocked the very symbol of the security I had built for him. The irony was so thick you could taste it. I had no idea, he finally whispered. His voice was shaky. I thought we were just getting by. I know you did, I said, and that was the point. I wanted you to have a normal life, not a life where you felt entitled because of money. But I see now, I might have kept too much from you. There's a difference between being humble and leaving your family in the dark. He sank into the chair across from the desk. The silence in the room was heavy, but it wasn't angry, it was thoughtful. The gears were turning in his head. I could see him replaying all his complaints, all his comments about the old car, all his pressures for me to spend money I was in fact spending, just not on myself. So all that time, he said, when I was going on about a new car you had already. Wait, I said. My voice was calm, quieter than I expected. I had already bought you one. I finished for him. I was just waiting for the right time. I wanted it to be a celebration of a real achievement, not just an expense. He looked down at his hands. I feel like such an idiot. Don't I said this is how you learn, this is the lesson. You're young, you see the world through a different lens. But now you know success isn't a loud noise, it's a quiet confidence. It's the freedom that comes from knowing your foundations are solid. He was quiet for another minute, just absorbing it. Then he looked up at me, and his eyes were different. The arrogance was completely gone. In its place was a new kind of respect, and a deep, genuine curiosity. Dad, he said, his voice firm now, can you teach me about the business, about how you did this, about investing? That was the moment, that was the real payoff, not the money in the account, but the spark of understanding in my son's eyes, the shift from valuing the trophy to valuing the discipline it takes to earn it. Of course I can, Leo, I said. We can start tomorrow. Well, look at the books together. I'll show you the whole picture. He nodded, a slow, determined nod, and as we walked back to the dinner table, the air had cleared. The joke he'd made earlier now hung in the past, a relic of an old way of thinking. He didn't look at my old car through the window with disdain anymore. I think he finally saw it for what it was, not a symbol of failure, but a badge of honor, a quiet testament to a different kind of strength. All right, settle in this one. This one still stings to think about. It's about my son Ben. It's about a car, and it's about the day he found out that the joke he was so proud of was actually on him. You see, we had this arrangement, a good one. I thought we had two cars, my daily driver, this old sedan, a real workhorse, ran perfectly, but it had some miles on it, some rust spots, the interior was a bit worn, nothing fancy. Then there was the second car, a newer SUV, reliable, safe, presentable. The agreement was simple. Ben could use the SUV whenever he needed it, for school, for seeing his friends. All I asked was that he respect my choice to drive the old one. It was paid for, it was cheap to run. You stopped your hand on the door handle, you didn't turn to look at me. It was mine, I had my reasons for keeping it. But for Ben, it was a constant source of embarrassment. I'd pull up to pick him up from soccer practice, And he'd take forever to get in the car. He'd slump down in the seat. I'd hear him talking to his friends. Yeah, it's my dad's old beater. He's just sentimental. I guess he'd always have a reason why we had to take the SUV if we were going anywhere together. I let it slide. I figured it was just kid stuff, being image conscious. Then it got worse. I started hearing things from other parents, little comments, how Ben had told his friend Jason that the old sedan was just a junker we were about to sell for scrap, that I usually drove a luxury model. But it was in the shop, a complete lie. He was building this fantasy for his friends, and my real life, my choices, were the inconvenient truth he had to hide. I tried to talk to him about it. I said, Ben, that car gets me from A to B. There's no shame in that. He'd just shrug and say, whatever, Dad, it's just a car. But his tone said everything else. It said I was an embarrassment. It said my values were outdated. It said I was less than. Then came the day of the prank. I was at the supermarket, just doing the weekly shop. I came out pushing my cart through the parking lot, and I saw it from a distance. There was something on the windshield of my car. As I got closer, my stomach just dropped. It was a sign, a big bright orange sign, and in bold black letters, it read, "For sale, 500 OBO RUNS kinda." I just stopped. I stood there, right there in the middle of the parking lot with people pushing carts around me. I felt a heat rise up my neck. It wasn't anger, not at first. It was a deep, profound hurt. Because I knew instantly who had done it. Ben knew. Where I was, his friend Jason lived nearby. This had his fingerprints all over it. I pulled the sign off the windshield, crumpled it in my hand, and got in the car. The drive home was completely silent. I didn't turn on the radio. I just sat with that feeling of betrayal. It was such a petty, cruel thing to do, a public humiliation for a laugh. I walked into the house, and he was right there in the kitchen getting a drink. He had this smirk on his face. Hey, Dad, how was the store? I held up the crumpled sign, care to explain this. He didn't even try to deny it. He burst out laughing. Oh my God, you saw it. That was Jason's idea. It was hilarious, right? I mean, we're not even wrong. $500 is probably optimistic. He was still chuckling, wiping a tear from his eye, completely oblivious to the look on my face. I have a question for you. I said, that new car you drive, the one you're so proud of, the one you wash every weekend, who do you think paid for that? That's when the anger came. But it was a cold, clear anger, the kind that makes you very, very calm. The laughter died in his throat when he saw my expression. It's not a joke, Ben, I said, my voice quiet and steady. It's a statement, and I heard you loud and clear. He rolled his eyes. Dad, come on, don't be so sensitive. It's just a stupid car. Is it? I said. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I went down the hall to my home office. He followed me, a confused look on his face. What are you doing? I didn't answer him. I went to my filing cabinet, the one with all the important documents. I knew exactly which folder to pull. It was a plain manila folder. I laid it on the desk and opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, the bill of sale for the SUV, the one he drove every day, the one he loved so much, the one he thought made him look so cool. What's that? He asked, his voice a little less sure. This, I said, pointing to the buyer's name. Is you? I then moved my finger to the line above it, the seller's information. And this is the dealership. Then I moved my finger to the bottom, to the financing section. It clearly listed the down payment amount and the source of the funds. And this, I said, my finger resting on the words, is where the money came from. He leaned in to look, his brow furrowed. He read it silently. Then, he read it again, aloud. Proceeds from seller's private transaction, a 1974 Triumph Bonneville motorcycle. He looked up at me, completely bewildered. Your motorcycle? The one you sold last year? I thought Mom said you sold it because it was old junk, that it was a death trap. You finally turned your head. There was a smirk on your face, a residue of the arrogance from earlier. What Mom did with the child support you send, or maybe it came from your savings, what does it matter? I let that hang in the air for a moment. The pieces were starting to connect in his head, and I could see the first flicker of dread in his eyes. That death trap, Ben, was the one thing I owned that I truly loved. I rebuilt that bike with my own hands. When you were little, I had it. Before I met your mother, it wasn't junk, it was a classic. And I didn't sell it because I wanted to. I sold it because you needed a car, a safe, reliable car, one that your mother and I could feel good about you driving. We didn't have the cash for it, but I had the bike. The color was draining from his face, But you said it was a gift from Grandma and Grandpa for my graduation. That's what we let you believe, I said softly. We thought it would be a nice story, that you'd appreciate it more if you thought it was a generous gift from your grandparents. We didn't want you to feel obligated. We certainly never expected this. I picked up the crumpled for sale sign from my desk and smoothed it out slightly, placing it next to the bill of sale. The two pieces of paper side by side told the whole story. So that junker you and your friends thought was so funny today, I said, my voice cracking. Just a little. That car you were so embarrassed by, that's the car I am driving. Because I sold my prized possession to buy you, that new one, the one you used to impress your friends, the one you used to drive away from me and my old beater. The silence in the room was absolute. I watched as the full weight of it landed on him. It wasn't just about a prank anymore. It was about the foundation of everything: his entitlement, his ingratitude, the cruel irony of his own actions. His knees seemed to buckle. He sank into the chair across from my desk. He stared at the two documents, his eyes tracing from the 500 joke price to the 5-figure sum from the bike sale. He was doing the math of his own character. You sold your bike, he whispered, not to me, but to himself for me. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wide, not with anger, but with a horrified dawning, understanding the mockery he directed at me, at my car. It was all directed at the very sacrifice that had given him his freedom, his status, his pride. It matters, I said, still keeping my voice, even because it didn't come from child support, and it didn't come from my savings. All this time, he said, his voice trembling, I was making fun of you for what you gave up for me. I just nodded. The disappointment I felt was a physical weight in my chest. It was heavier than any anger, the prank, Ben. It wasn't. The worst part was the laughter, mocking something you didn't understand, showing everyone you value the wrong things. That's not a joke, that's a choice. He put his head in his hands. There were no tears, not yet. It was too deep for that. It was a shock, a seismic shift in his whole world. The villain in his story wasn't his uncool dad with the old car. The villain was him. He had built his own humiliation brick by brick, with his own lies and his own cruelty. He looked at the keys to the SUV, sitting on the desk where he'd tossed them earlier. They looked different now. They weren't a symbol of his coolness anymore. They were a symbol of what he'd lost, and what he was in danger of losing forever. I don't know what to say, he mumbled into his hands. There's nothing to say right now, Ben, I said, closing the folder. The truth is just sitting there. You have to figure out what you're going to do with it, earning back trust. That's a long road, longer than any drive in a new car. I left him there, sitting in my office, staring at that folder. The karma didn't feel good. It felt necessary. It felt like the only thing that could possibly crack through his pride. But watching my son confront the worst version of himself, that's a bitter pill for both of us. The party was over, the work was just beginning. This car, it's not much to look at. I know that the paint has faded to a dull rusted in some spots, a primer gray in others. There's a dent on the passenger side door I never got around to fixing. But when I turn the key, that engine purrs. It's a clean, honest sound. I've kept it that way every weekend I'm out here in the garage. Just me and the smell of oil and gasoline. It's a kind of peace, getting your hands dirty, understanding how things work. This car has taken me to work and back for 18 years. It carried your mother home from the hospital when she was pregnant with you. It's part of the family, or at least I thought it was. I remember the first time you asked me not to pick you up from school in it. You were about 14. You said the other kids' parents had SUVs, or new sedans. You said my truck was an embarrassment. I just laughed it off then. I thought it was a phase. But it got worse. The comments became sharper. You'd wince when it'd pull up somewhere, sliding down in the seat like you wanted to disappear. You started talking about your friends' fathers, the ones in suits, the ones with corner offices. You'd say things like maybe. Your smirk faded, replaced by a look of confusion. Then where? Should have tried for a management position, or don't you get tired of getting your hands dirty all day? And I'd just shrug. What could I say? That I loved the work, that fixing something broken, making it run right again, that felt more real to me than any spreadsheet ever could. You wouldn't have understood. You saw grease under my fingernails as a failure. I saw it as a day's honest work. Then the new car arrived. I'll never forget the look on your face when that flatbed truck pulled up outside our house. The driver had a clipboard. He asked for you by name. And there it was, this sleek silver sports car, all gleaming paint and alloy wheels. It looked like a spaceship had landed on our modest little street. You were ecstatic. You kept running your hands over the hood, like you couldn't believe it was real. The note was simple, just a card that said for your future. You immediately decided it had to be from your great-uncle Robert, the one who moved out west and made a fortune in something tech-related. You'd met him once when you were 6. That's when the real mockery started. It was like the new car gave you permission to be cruel. You'd stand next to your shiny new vehicle and gesture at my old truck. Now, that's a real car, you'd say. Not that piece of junk, you should just scrap it. It's worthless. You'd laugh with your friends about it. It'd hear you from the garage. Yeah, my dad's still driving that relic. No, I don't know why. Guess he doesn't care about looking poor. Each word was like a little chip off something inside me. It wasn't about the truck anymore. It was about me. Everything I was, everything I'd built. It was all just a joke to you, a piece of junk. The letter came about a week later. Thick, expensive paper from a law firm. I'd never heard of it. Was addressed to both of us. We opened it together at the kitchen table. You were probably hoping it was more money. The letter was very formal. It explained that the funds for the new car had been dispersed from the estate of a man named Arthur Finley. The name didn't ring a bell for you, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. Artie Wed worked together at my first proper mechanic job. Must be 30 years ago. Now he was a few years older than me. A bit lost. He'd had a run of bad luck. His marriage had fallen apart, and he was about to be evicted from his apartment. The letter detailed how I'd let him sleep on my couch for 3 months rent-free, how I'd covered for him at work when he was struggling, how I'd helped him get back on his feet. I'd forgotten all about it. It was just something you did for a friend. Apparently Artie never forgot. He'd moved away, started his own small business, and done well for himself. He never married, never had kids, and in his will, he'd left a specific bequest, a sum of money, not a fortune, but a significant amount was to go to me. The letter stated that I had been contacted by the estate's executor upon Artie's passing, and I had given them specific instructions. Thought I didn't notice the way you'd slouch down just a bit if we passed a group of kids walking to school. You thought I didn't hear the muttered complaints about the lack of Bluetooth, or the fact that the air conditioning sounded like a tired old man wheezing. It came from the sale of the Mustang, I said. I looked up from the letter, and your face had completely changed. The smugness was gone. It was just pale. You were reading ahead, your eyes scanning the same paragraph over and over. Because the next part was my instruction, I had refused the money for myself. I told the executor that every last cent of Artie's kindness was to be put into 2 things for you. The first part was to be set aside for your final year of college tuition. The second part, the remainder, was to be used to purchase a safe, reliable vehicle for you, your brand new car, the one you'd been boasting about, the one you'd used as a weapon to mock my life, my choices, my own truck. The silence in the kitchen was heavier than any engine block I'd ever lifted. You just stared at the paper. I could see you putting it together. The car wasn't a gift from some distant wealthy relative. It was a payment, a transaction. But the currency wasn't money. The currency was a kindness I'd done half a lifetime ago, a kindness I never once brought up, never used as a lesson. It was just part of who I was. The value of that kindness had appreciated over 30 years silently, in a way no stock or investment ever could, and it had finally matured, and it had been spent entirely on you. You looked from the letter to me, and then out the window at the 2 cars parked side beside, the shiny silver one and the old faded red one. And for the first time, I think you really saw them. You saw that my car was paid for with every turn of a wrench, every sore muscle, every early morning. And you saw that your car was paid for with a couch to sleep on, and a belief in a friend when he had none. Your car was bought with my character, and you had called it worthless. The shame that washed over your face was a physical thing. I could see it. Your shoulders slumped. You didn't say anything for a long time. You just kept looking at that old truck. And I saw something new in your eyes. Not pity, not disgust. It was a dawning respect. You were finally seeing the engine, not just the rusty exterior. You were seeing that a man's worth isn't in what he drives, but in the drives him, the integrity, the loyalty, the quiet willingness to help. That was the real inheritance. The car was just a byproduct. You folded the letter very carefully, your hands trembling just a little. You slid it back into the envelope. Then you took a deep breath and looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time in years, your voice was quiet, stripped of all its arrogance. Dad, you said. And the words sounded different. It had weighed again. That engine, the one in your truck, the way it always starts right up. How did you do that? I just waited. You swallowed hard. Would you show me sometime? I think I'd like to learn how it works. The confusion on your face deepened, then cleared, replaced by a dawning horror. You knew about the Mustang, the 1967 Shelby GT 500. The car I had spent 10 years restoring with my dad, your grandfather. The car that was supposed to be my retirement project. The one I was going to finish with you, the one I told you stories about, the one you used to sit in when you were little, making engine noises, pretending to drive the car that was by any measure a part of our family's history. The notification popped up on my phone while I was having my morning coffee. A text from my sister. Have you seen what your boy posted? You need to look at this. I sighed. It was probably another one of his videos, the kind where he's dancing or showing off some new gadget. I was happy he was creative. I opened the app, and there it was at the top of my feed. The video started with his face, all smiles, the sunroof of his new car open behind him. What's up, everyone? Just wanted to give you a little tour of my new ride. Pretty sweet, right? He panned the camera around the interior, showing off the leather seats, the big touchscreen. He was so proud. I felt a swell of pride too. It was a good car, safe, reliable. I was happy I could give that to him. Then he said, but check this out for a little perspective. The camera swung to the side window, and there I was, just pulling up in my old sedan. You know, the one the paint's a little faded. There's a small dent in the passenger door from that shopping cart years ago. It's just a car. It gets me from point A to point B. He zoomed in, and here comes my dad in his, well, I'm not sure what you call this thing, a relic. He laughed. It was a mean laugh, a performative laugh. I mean, look at it. It's like it drove straight out of a history book. And check out the outfit, the classic dad uniform. You gotta love it. He kept the camera on me as I got out. I was just wearing my usual Saturday clothes, a plain t-shirt, some old jeans. I was heading to the hardware store. I had no idea I was being filmed. I had no idea I was the punchline. The comments were already pouring in, thousands of them. At first he was probably just seeing the numbers go up, the views climbing. He called me later that day, all excited. Dad, my video is blowing up. It's got like 500,000 views. I could hear the thrill in his voice. He didn't hear the tightness in mine. When I said, that's great, son, I didn't have the heart to tell him I'd already seen it. That I'd read the comments, not the ones he was seeing, the ones praising him. I saw the other ones, the people calling him disrespectful, ungrateful, asking how he could mock the man who raised him. The hurt was a physical thing, a cold weight in my chest. It wasn't just the jokes. It was the fact that he did it for an audience, that my value in his eyes was measured against the shine of a new car. I didn't say anything that day or the next. I let it sit. I needed to think. A confrontation would just lead to a fight. He'd get defensive. He'd say I didn't get his humor, that it was just for content. I needed him to understand, really understand. So a few days later, I decided to speak his language. I set up my phone on a stack of books on the kitchen table. I sat down, took a deep breath, and pressed record. Hello, I started, looking right into the camera. My voice was calm, steady. My name is David. Some of you might have seen a video recently featuring me and my car. I held up a printed sheet of paper. This is a bank statement from the joint account I share with my son. I pointed to a line item. You can see here a payment to sit aside Audi. You can see his name right there, the payment for his new car. It was gone from the garage 6 months. Before you got your new car, I told you I'd sold it. Because I didn't have the time for it anymore. You never questioned it. I set the paper down. He was so excited when he got it, his graduation gift. It was a gesture of love, a parent's desire to see their child safe and happy on the road. I thought it was a simple thing, a gift. I paused, letting that sit. But the video got me thinking about where things come from, about sacrifice. I picked up my phone and turned the camera around, showing a framed photograph on the wall behind me. It was a picture of me years younger, standing next to a beautiful restored 1967 Ford Mustang Cherry Red. It was my project car, something I'd worked on for over a decade. Every weekend in the garage, it was my pride and joy. I loved that car, I said, turning the camera back to my face. It wasn't just metal and glass, it was history. It was patience. It was a dream I built with my own 2 hands. I took another breath. This was the hard part. I sold it last month to a collector in Ohio. I held up the bank statement again. But this time I pointed to a different line, a large deposit. That money went into this account, and that money is what paid for my son's new car. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. After I stopped recording, I uploaded the video, I didn't tag him, I didn't make a big deal about it. I just put it out there then. I went out to mow the lawn, I didn't look at my phone for hours. When I came back inside, my phone was vibrating nonstop, dozens of missed calls, texts from my sister, my friends, David. It's everywhere. I opened the app, my simple, quiet video had exploded. It had been shared thousands of times. The comments were a flood of support, people telling stories about their own parents' sacrifices, talking about their first cars. No matter how humble the story, got picked up by local news stations. Then bigger blogs. The headline was always some version of son mocks dad's old car. Dad reveals he sold his beloved classic to pay for son's new ride. The court of public opinion had convened, and the verdict was brutal for my son. He came over that night. He didn't call first, he just showed up at the door. His face was pale, he looked like he hadn't slept. Dad, he said, his voice cracking, I saw your video. I let him in. We sat at the same kitchen table. He couldn't even look at me. The comments, he whispered, they're awful. People are saying horrible things. They're telling me I am a terrible person. He finally looked up, and his eyes were red. I am a terrible person. No, I said, you're not a terrible person. You did a terrible thing. There's a difference. You sold grandpa's car. You whispered. The words were barely audible. The whole story tumbled out of him then, how he was so caught up in getting followers, in going viral, how he thought the mocking was just edgy humor, that everyone would get the joke. He never stopped to think that I was the joke. He never imagined where the money came from. He just accepted the gift like it was his right. Entitlement. That was the word he used. I was so entitled. He set his head in his hands. I didn't even think. I didn't see you. I just saw an old car and an old man I could use for clicks. He was crying now, real genuine tears of shame. Your Mustang, you loved that car, you spent years on it, and you sold it for me. And I made a video making fun of you in the car. You bought the weight of it. Finally truly landed on him. It wasn't about the online shame anymore, it was about what he had done to me. The public humiliation was one thing. This, the private realization of his own ingratitude, was the real reckoning. We need to talk about this world you're so invested in. I told him this social media. It's not real life. Those likes, those shares, they're fleeting. They don't love you, they don't care about you. But family, that's permanent, or it's supposed to be. You traded a moment of online fame for a piece of our trust. That's a bad bargain, son. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I know, I see that now. It's so toxic. It makes you think that your value is based on what you have, how you look, what other people think of you. It made me forget what's actually important. We talked for a long time that night about gratitude, about respect, about the quiet, uncelebrated sacrifices parents make every single day, the things that never get filmed, the extra hours at work, the things we go without, so our kids can have more, the old cars we drive without complaint, so they can have a safe new one. A few days later, he asked if we could make one more video together. This time, it was his idea. We sat side by side at the table. He started, I owe my dad an apology, a real one, not just for what I did, but for what I didn't understand. He talked about the lesson he learned about the danger of letting your online persona overshadow your real-life character. He talked about sacrifice and what it really looks like. Then I spoke. I forgive you, I said, putting my arm around him. That's what family does. We learn, we grow. Sometimes the lessons are hard, sometimes they're very, very public. I managed a small smile. But the goal isn't to be shamed. The goal is to be better, to be grateful for what you have, and more importantly, for the people who make it possible. The video ended with us talking, not as a performer and his punchline, but as a father and son who had navigated a storm and found their way back to each other. The reconciliation wasn't for the views, it was for us. It was a promise to be more mindful, to talk more, and to always, always remember that no amount of online validation is worth hurting the people who love you most. The glitter of a new car fades, the respect of your family is what truly lasts. I said I sold it to a collector. Every single penny from that sale went into the account. Your mother used to buy your car. The insurance for the first 2 years came out of that money too. The color drained from your face. You looked down at your hands, then back at me, your eyes wide. The arrogance, the entitlement, it all just crumbled away. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. You weren't my cool, dismissive teenager anymore. You were just a kid who had just realized a terrible, gut-wrenching truth. You loved that car, you said, your voice cracking. I replied, But I love you more. I thought you needed something reliable, something safe, something that would I don't know fit in make things easier for you. Tears welled up in your eyes. They weren't tears of manipulation. They were real shame-filled tears. I am so sorry, Dad. I didn't know. I would never have I said those things about this car. You gestured weakly at the dashboard. And you sold the Mustang for me. The dam broke then, the apology poured out of you messy, and raw and completely genuine. You talked about how stupid you felt, how ashamed you were of your behavior not just today, but for months. You said you saw your friends with their new cars, their nice things. And you felt like you were less than them. You thought this old car was a sign that I didn't care, that I was okay with you being an outcast. You told me you were a fool, a cowardly fool, for caring so much about what other people thought. That day was different. It was the big football game, the one against our rivals. You were all dressed up in the school colors. Your hair perfectly done. You looked older. You looked impatient. I was already in the car like always. And I saw you come out of the house. You stopped on the front step, your eyes fixed on the car. You didn't just slump this time. Your whole face tightened. You walked over slowly, deliberately, as if each step was a chore. I listened. I let you talk, until you had nothing left to say. Then I spoke. This car, I said, patting the steering wheel, has never broken down. It has never left me stranded. It gets me where I need to go. Its value isn't in how it looks. Its value is in what it does. It's reliable. It has substance. I thought that was a more important lesson than having the shiniest thing in the parking lot. But I was wrong about that too. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have trusted you with it. You were crying openly, now not even trying to hide it. I don't deserve the car you bought me, you said. That's not the point, I said. The point isn't what you deserve. The point is what we value. I value your happiness and your safety more than I ever valued a piece of metal, even one with as many memories as that Mustang. But I need you to understand that real value, the kind that lasts, has nothing to do with the price tag. It's in the history of this car, the miles we've driven in it. It's in the sacrifice that put you behind the wheel of your own. It's in being a person of substance, not just appearance. You nodded, wiping your eyes with the back of your hand. You took a deep, shaky breath. Can I wash it for you tomorrow? You asked. This car, I mean. I looked at you, really looked at you. And for the first time in a long time, I saw my son again, not the stranger who had been living in your room. I'd like that. I said, I'd like that very much. You know, for the longest time I thought a car was just a way to get from point A to point B. It didn't need to be flashy. It just needed to be reliable. That old sedan of mine, it had some dings, the color was fading a bit. But the engine was solid. It never let me down. To me, that car represented freedom. But it was a quiet, practical kind of freedom. It was paid for. That was the most beautiful thing about it. No monthly payment hanging over my head. That money every single month was going into your college fund, into our retirement, into investments that would grow over time. It was a choice, a conscious one. I never felt like I was missing out. I felt smart. I felt prepared. And then there was you. I watched you grow up in a different world, a world of instant everything. You'd see a new video game, you'd download it in seconds. You wanted to watch a movie. It just appeared on the screen. Your friends got new phones, new sneakers, new cars. And it all seemed to just happen. There was no waiting, no saving, it was just there. And I saw you start to absorb, that you started to equate the new thing with success. Happiness became something you could buy, something that arrived in a box with next day shipping. I'd hear you talking with your friends about some new model of a car, about horsepower and custom rims, and I'd just listen from the other room. I heard the longing in your voice. The comments about my car started small. You'd get in after school and say something like, wow, this thing is a museum piece. Or you'd joke about the radio, asking if it could pick up any programs from the 1980s. I'd just laugh it off. I didn't mind. I thought it was just teenage humor. But then it got sharper. We'd be driving past a lot full of shiny new trucks and SUVs. And you'd say, must be nice to have a car that doesn't have its own rust ecosystem. One day, you came home from a friend's house. You got in, slammed the door, a little harder than necessary. Can we just go and maybe park around back or something? You said, not even looking at me. I just nodded and put the car in reverse. The whole drive there, you were silent, staring out the window, tapping your fingers nervously on your knee. The radio was off. The only sound was the familiar hum of the engine and the soft thrum of the tires on the pavement. I could feel the tension coming off you in waves. It was a 15-minute drive that felt like an hour. Kid whose parents had just bought him a brand new sedan for his birthday. You were quiet for a bit. And then you just said it. Why can't we ever have nice things like everyone else? Why do we have to be the family with the embarrassing car? You didn't even say it angrily. You said it with a kind of weary resignation, like our frugality was a personal failure you had to bear. That one stung. It wasn't about the car anymore, it was about you feeling lesser than, and that I couldn't let stand. So I set up a meeting with you. I sat you down at the kitchen table, and I laid out a deal. I said, if you wanted a new car so badly, you had to be a part of making it happen. I told you that for every dollar you earned and saved from a job, I would match it dollar for dollar. But it had to be your money from a real job, not allowance, not birthday, cash. You had to work for it. The goal was $5,000. If you could save $5,000 from your paychecks, I'd match it. And that $10,000 would be your car fund. Your eyes lit up like I'd just handed you the keys to the city. You saw a challenge, you saw a finish line, you didn't see the lesson, yet you just saw the car. I have to give you credit, son. You went out, and you got a job bussing tables at that Italian place downtown. It was hard work. You came home smelling like garlic and tired to your bones. I watched you on those Friday nights, when your friends were all heading out to the movies, or just hanging out, and you'd be tying your apron, grumbling about the dinner rush. Your first paycheck was a revelation. You held that check, and you saw the hours you'd worked translated into numbers. You opened a savings account, and you deposited every cent. The nagging about my car completely stopped. You were too busy. You were on a mission. Months went by. We'd sometimes sit and look at car listings online, but we stayed focused on used cars, good value cars in that $10,000 range. You started talking about mileage and maintenance history instead of cool paint jobs. You were learning without even realizing it. The day you finally transferred that $5,000 into your account, you were beaming. You had done it entirely on your own. The pride on your face was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. You'd set a goal, and you'd achieved it through sheer grit. We went car shopping that next weekend. We found a great little coupe, a few years old, but in fantastic shape. One careful owner. It was exactly $10,000. You test drove it, and your smile was a mile wide. You signed the paperwork, and you drove it home. You believed with your whole heart that you had bought this car. You'd earned every penny of it. And I let you believe that. I wanted you to sit in that feeling for a while. I wanted you to appreciate the weight of it, the accomplishment. For a few weeks, everything was perfect. You were responsible. You washed that car every Sunday. You were careful where you parked it. You were proud of it. And then one afternoon, we were both heading out. You were going to meet some friends, and I was going to the hardware store. You were standing by your shiny car, jingling your keys. I walked past you to get to my old sedan, and you smirked. You looked at my car, and then back at your own, and you said it, just a throwaway line, a little sarcastic jab you thought was funny. Well, at least one of us finally graduated from the old clunker. You laughed. You expected me to laugh with you. When we pulled into the school parking lot, it was chaos. Kids everywhere, music blasting from other cars, the whole place buzzing with energy. Your anxiety was palpable. You were scanning the crowds, looking for your friends. But also, I could tell, scanning for anyone who might see you getting out of this car over there. You pointed sharply to a spot far away from the main entrance, near the dumpsters. Just pull in there. I didn't laugh. I just looked at you, and I said very calmly, come with me to my office. For a minute, you got a little quiet. You could tell the tone had shifted. You followed me inside, and into the small room I use for the household files. I didn't say a word. I just opened up my laptop, and I pulled up a spreadsheet I'd been building for months. I turned the screen to face you. It was all there, every single line item. The spreadsheet had two columns. One was labeled your contribution, the other was labeled my match. And line by line, deposit by deposit, it showed your entire journey. Your first paycheck deposit of $320, my transfer of $320, that same day your next deposit of $280, my matching $280. Every single dollar you had painstakingly saved was right there, and right next to it in perfect synchronization was my $4 match. The math was undeniable. It was right there in black and white, your $5,000 and my $5,000. You stared at the screen. Your face went pale. I could see your eyes tracing the lines, doing the math in your head. The reality crashing down on you. You hadn't bought that car. We had bought it together. Your voice was very small. When you finally spoke, you matched it. The whole time I nodded. I said, that was the deal we made. I had just chosen not to show you my half until you had completed yours. Then I opened another tab on the spreadsheet. This one was a budget. It showed the hypothetical monthly payment on a new car, a modest one, something like what my old sedan would have cost if it had a loan on it. I showed you how for over 10 years that payment had never been made instead. That exact amount of money had been automatically transferred into an investment account every single month. I showed you the graph, the line slowly curving upward as compound interest did its quiet, powerful work. Showed you how that account, built entirely from the money not spent on a car payment for a decade, was the source of the $5,000 I had matched for you. The old car wasn't a clunker. It wasn't a symbol of failure. It was the engine, it was the machine that generated the capital. My choice to drive it, to ignore the jokes, to prioritize function over fashion, was what gave me the liquidity to meet you halfway when you were ready to be serious. That car allowed me to invest in your ambition. The money I gave you wasn't a sacrifice. It was a strategic allocation of resources that my choices had made available. The shame on your face was profound. But it wasn't the only thing there. I saw curiosity. I saw all the anger you expected from me never came. There was no "I told you." So there was just math, the indisputable logic of money. You looked from the spreadsheet to me. And your whole understanding of what wealth was, of what it meant to have nice things, was being rewritten right in front of me. You finally understood that the nice thing wasn't the new car in the driveway. The nice thing was the security. The nice thing was having the resources to help your kid when he was ready to work for something. The nice thing was options. You sank into the chair. You didn't apologize for your joke. You just said, "Can you show me how to make one of these?" You were pointing at the spreadsheet. You wanted to see the investment account graph again. You asked me what compound interest meant exactly. You asked how I decided how much to invest each month. The questions started pouring out of you. The sarcastic teenager was gone. In his place was a young man who had just seen behind the curtain for the first time, who realized the world operated on. I put the car in park, and you were out of the door before the engine had even settled. You started walking quickly toward the field, not looking back. I got out too slower. I was going to walk you to the gate like I always did. But you had already merged with a group of your friends. I saw them slap you on the back laughing. I saw you laugh back. But it was too loud, too forced. You glanced back over your shoulder just for a second, and your eyes met mine, and then you did it. Systems he could learn and use. We spent the next 2 hours right there at that desk. I showed you my budget. I showed you how we planned for big expenses. I showed you the difference between saving and investing. I explained risk and time horizons. You listened with a focus I'd never seen from you in school. The car outside was forgotten. You were fascinated by the machinery of it, all the quiet, patient building of a life. Later that night, I saw the light on under your bedroom door. I peeked and you were at your own laptop. And you'd opened a blank spreadsheet. You were trying to build a budget for yourself, for your income from the restaurant. You were planning not for a car, but for your future. That was the moment I knew the lesson had landed. It wasn't about guilt. It was about empowerment. You finally saw that the greatest luxury isn't something you drive, it's peace of mind. It's having control over your money, so it never controls you, and that's a vehicle that will take you anywhere you want to go. I was polishing the car in the driveway when you came out. Not a real wash, just a slow, steady wipe of the cloth over the fender. The chrome wasn't so shiny anymore, and the blue paint had dulled. But the Sunday ritual was never really about the shine. It was about the feel of the metal under my hand. The familiar curves. This car is a time capsule, son. It has my father's fingerprints sealed in the clear coat. My entire childhood is woven into the fabric of these seats. It was my father's pride, the first solid thing he owned in this country. He bought it the year I turned 7. I remember the smell, that new car smell mixed with the scent of his cheap cologne, and the hope that was so thick in the air you could almost taste it. He'd worked 2 years of double shifts at the factory for the down payment. It wasn't just a car, it was a trophy, proof that the sacrifice meant something. We drove it everywhere, road trips to see relatives who had also made the journey, crammed in with cousins, the trunk packed with food, my mother's laughter echoing as we sang songs from the old country. This car carried us to my grandfather's funeral, and years later, it carried me to my high school graduation. Your grandfather taught me how to drive in this car, his calm, patient voice guiding me on these very streets. It's seen first dates, and it brought your mother and I home from the hospital with you. Every scratch on the bumper is a story, every squeak of the suspension is a memory. It's the one solid thread that connects our life now to the struggle that made it possible. But you just saw an old car. You saw the rust spot near the wheel, well, the faded upholstery. You saw a machine outdated and slow. You never saw the narrative. You never asked about the stories to you. It was just my eccentricity, this thing I refused to let go of. The comment came at your cousin's graduation party. Everyone was in the backyard, laughing, eating. The mood was light. You were showing off your new car to your friends, letting them sit in the leather seats, showing them the touchscreen. I was proud of you, proud that we could give you that. I was standing by the picnic table with your grandfather. My father, he's older now, his hands are rough, and he moves slower, but his eyes still have that same sharpness. He was watching you, a quiet smile on his face. You walked over to us still. You raised your voice loud enough to carry, loud enough for me and everyone nearby to hear. You pointed back at the car with your thumb. Yeah, thanks for the ride, you said, your voice dripping with a sarcasm I hadn't heard from you before. Had to take the junk heap today. Hopefully it makes it back home without falling apart. Your friends laughed. One of them, a tall kid with a baseball cap on backwards, laughed the loudest and clapped you on the shoulder. Dude, that thing is a classic, he said, but he was mocking it too. Classic piece of buzzing from showing off your car. You glanced over at my old sedan parked on the street, and you shook your head, a smirk on your face. You meant it as a joke, I know, just a throwaway line to your friends, but the words landed differently in the circle of elders. You said loud enough for everyone to hear, Dad, when are you finally going to retire that antique embarrassment? It's a miracle it even made it over here. You laughed. Your friends chuckled along, but the silence from your grandfather and your uncles was immediate and heavy. It wasn't the insult to me that cut, son. I am used to your good-natured ribbing. It was the insult to the man standing next to me. It was the dismissal of the story he represents. The antique embarrassment was the vessel that carried his American dream. I saw the smile fade from his eyes, replaced by a deep, weathered sadness. He didn't say a word. He just looked from you back to the car, and then slowly turned and walked toward the house. That was the line you crossed. You mocked the altar, and you didn't even know you were in a church. My anger wasn't loud, it was quiet and profound, a cold stone settling in my stomach. I didn't say anything to you then. I just watched you, the oblivious pride on your face. Later, after the party had wound down and everyone had left, I found you in your room. I didn't yell, I just said, come with me, bring your keys. You looked confused, maybe a little defensive, thinking I was going to take your car away as punishment. But I led you out to the garage, past your shiny new car, and over to the old workbench. On it was a large leather-bound photo album, its cover cracked with age. I opened it. The first photo was of your grandfather, a young man, not much older than you are now, standing outside the factory gate, his face smudged with grime, but his back straight. I showed you the pictures of him at his second job, sweeping floors in an office building long after his shift at the plant had ended. I showed you the ledger, where he recorded every penny, save the numbers, small and precise in his elegant handwriting. And then I showed you the photo I love the most, him standing right beside this old car on the day he bought it. His hand is resting on the roof, and the look on his face isn't just pride, it's pure, unadulterated triumph. It's the look of a man who had conquered a small piece of the world for his family. You were quiet, just looking at the pictures. Then I reached into the drawer of the workbench and pulled out another envelope. Inside was the receipt from the jeweler. I handed it to you. You read it. Your brow furrowed. It was for the sale of my mother's brooch, the only thing of value her own mother had managed to bring with her when they fled, a family heirloom. It had been sitting in a safety deposit box for years. We sold it last fall. I watched as the numbers on the receipt connected with the price of the car in your mind. The brooch your great-grandmother wore on her wedding day, the one she hid in her child's clothing during their escape. It paid for the down payment on your new car. The legacy you mock today is the same legacy that bought you the freedom and status you were so proudly showing off. The very history you called an embarrassment funded your pride. The silence in the garage was thicker than the silence at the party. You didn't look at me. You just stared at that receipt, your hand trembling slightly. The smirk was gone, replaced by a pale, stunned understanding. The weight of your words finally landed on you, and I saw them crush the casual arrogance you had carried all afternoon. Junk, another one added. You finally looked up, and your eyes were glistening. You looked from the photo of your beaming grandfather to the keys in your hand, and then back to me. The apology wasn't for me. It was quieter than that, more profound. You whispered, I didn't know. I am so sorry about Granddad, about everything. You understood then that the old car wasn't a piece of junk. It's a monument, a reminder of where we came from, of the grit and the perseverance it took to get here. It's the physical proof of a journey that started long before you were born, a journey of sacrifice that spanned an ocean and 2 generations, all so that you could stand there holding the keys to a car you never had to work a double shift to earn. You looked at the photo album, and then back out at the old car sitting in the driveway. The late afternoon sun was hitting it. And for a moment it didn't look old or faded, it just looked solid permanent. You wiped your eyes with the back of your hand, and took a shaky breath. You didn't ask about your car, or the brooch, or anything about money. You just pointed to the picture of your grandfather by the factory gate. And your voice was very quiet, very small, when you asked, "Can you tell me more about him?" About what? It was really like. And right then, I knew the lesson had taken root. It wasn't about the cars anymore. It was about the story. It was about the dignity of the struggle. It was about earning the respect for the people who made your life possible. You finally wanted to learn about the fabric you were cut from. The morning starts before the sun even thinks about rising. The alarm is this harsh electronic sound that cuts right through the few hours of sleep I managed to get. My feet hit the floor. And the routine begins. It's a quiet practice dance in the dark. Shower, coffee, wake you up for school. The house is always so still at that hour, just the hum of the refrigerator, and the sound of my own breathing. And then, there's the drive, that first turn of the key in the ignition of my car. It's not a new sound, it's a grumble, a protest from an old engine that's seen more miles than I care to count. But it always starts. That's the thing, it always starts. It's been with us for 10 years now, this little blue sedan with the fading paint, and the seat that's permanently shaped to my frame. I know every rattle, every squeak, the way the passenger window sticks when it's humid, the soft thrum of the tires on the highway that used to lull you to sleep. When you were little, this car has been our cocoon. It's carried us to every school play, every soccer practice, every late-night trip to the grocery store, because we were out of milk. It's seen us through rainstorms and snowstorms and blistering summer days, when the air conditioning just couldn't keep up. It's not much to look at, I know that, but it's been our shelter. My pride was never in having something shiny. My pride was in the fact that the heat always worked in the winter, and the doors always locked at night, and it never ever left us stranded. It got me to my job day in and day out, and it got you to school. That was the victory, that was the whole point. I remember the day I decided to get you a car. You were about to graduate high school and your friends were all getting new cars or nice, used ones. You never complained, not really. But I'd see the way you'd look at your friends' cars in the school parking lot, a little flicker of something in your eyes, not envy exactly, but a kind of longing, a wish for something that was just easier, safer. I'd lie awake at night, worrying about you driving that old beater of mine once you were on your own. Every weird noise it made felt like a warning. You smiled, a tight, nasty little smile. You were one of them, you had proven it. And the cost of your entry into that group was me. I just stood there. I felt a coldness wash over me, starting in my chest and spreading out to my fingertips. The hurt was a sharp physical thing, but it was quickly followed by a slow, deep anger. It wasn't a rage, it was heavier than that. It was a profound disappointment that settled in my bones. I didn't say a word, I just looked at you. I saw the moment you registered my. So I started a secret project. I called it the car fund. It wasn't much, a few dollars from every paycheck. I stopped getting coffee on the way to work. I started bringing my lunch every single day, a turkey sandwich and an apple. I canceled the cable subscription. I wore my old winter coat for one more season, even though the lining was torn. It was all little things, tiny sacrifices that added up penny by penny. But it wasn't enough, not for the kind of car I wanted for you. Something reliable, with good safety ratings, something that wouldn't break down on you on some dark road. That's when I made the bigger decision, the one I didn't tell anyone about. I went down to the credit union, and I took out a loan against my 401k. It wasn't a lot, just enough for a solid down payment on a nice, safe, used car for you. The man at the bank, he looked at me over his glasses and said, "You know, this is your retirement. This is money you're not going to have later." And I just nodded. I said, "My son's safety is more important than my retirement." It was that simple to me. The day I surprised you with it, that was one of the best days of my life. I blindfolded you and led you out into the driveway. When you took the blindfold off and saw that car sitting there with a big red bow on the hood, the look on your face, it was pure, unadulterated joy. You hugged me so tight. You kept saying, "Mom, are you serious? Is this really for me?" For a few weeks you were so grateful. You'd wash it every weekend. You were so careful with it. But then slowly things changed. The novelty wore off. Your friends had newer models, faster cars, better sound systems. The comments started, little things at first, jokes about how my car was a vintage model. You'd say maybe we should donate it to a museum. I'd laugh it off. I didn't mind you teasing me, but it got sharper. We were in the driveway one afternoon. I was getting out of my car tired from a double shift. You were leaning against your car. Talking to a friend on the phone, I heard you say it. You said, yeah, my mom still drives that old piece of junk. It's kind of embarrassing, to be honest. I keep telling her to get rid of it, it's pathetic. Pathetic. The word just hung in the air, it was like a physical blow. I felt all the air leave my lungs, all the long hours. The skipped meals, the constant worry, it all condensed into that one moment, that one word. I just stood there, my hand still on the door handle of my faithful old car, the car that had never let us down. I didn't say anything then, I just went inside. But it festered for days, that word echoed in my head. It was like a splinter working its way deeper. And deeper, the ingratitude, the sheer lack of understanding, it ate away at me, until I felt like I was going to burst. The breaking point came a week later. You were late for school, and you couldn't find your keys. You were frustrated, stomping around the house. And you snapped at me, if you didn't always have so much clutter everywhere I could find my things. It was such a small, stupid thing. But it was the last straw, the dam just broke.